Nobody would have noticed that. But we also started out with the Milwaukee Bucks winning an NBA championship, and that's a segue in to the Cowboys are in Oxnard to start training camp in their hopes of one day getting back to that point. John Machota, theathletic.com, joins us on SicEm365 Radio. John, have you seen Jerry that kind of emotional or this kind of emotional? I know on occasion, but your thoughts about today?
Yeah, not all in like one news conference. He's had bits and pieces throughout the last few years. I feel like it's increased though, and for me, it kind of goes back to the pandemic as it affected everybody. I think that just some people it probably impacted a little bit more in terms of just like natural people, person like Jerry Jones who needs to be around people a lot, and him not getting that chance last year. I know that really. That really bothered him. And then the fact that he loves coming out here to California for training camp. They couldn't do that last year. And then I think also it's a little bit of he knows he probably doesn't have a lot of these camps left in him just because of his age. And so I think that there's been like a lot of reflection these last couple of days since he's been here. And I think that, you just saw that because it wasn't like it was just one answer where he started getting emotional. It was a couple of different things and it was on different topics as well. So yeah, that was probably my biggest takeaway from all of it. Because I already seen there's some headlines I'm working on some for tomorrow morning, just kind of highlighting what I thought was the most interesting things. But there are a lot of headlines coming out talking about how Jerry would pay anything for a Super Bowl and would do anything for a Super Bowl. Yeah, Jerry says that every single year. Like there's nothing new about that. That's been going on, and as long as I've covered the team, it's probably been going on a lot longer than that. So that's not a surprise to me. I mean, yeah, of course that he's going to say he'd do anything. I mean, when you're as wealthy as Jerry Jones, of course you'd pay whatever it costs if you get one more Super Bowl. So that wasn't exactly, earth shattering to me. And he didn't say any type of, bold, like, I think we have a Super Bowl team here or anything like that. I mean, he was pretty cautious by Jerry Jones standards for an opening press conference and not saying anything too much because I think he understands that a lot of things have to fall into place for that to happen. But certainly we're all happy to be out here, but I don't think anyone's happier to be out here than Jerry Jones is right now.
I think one of the most telling things he said about the defense was they need a legit star like they had with Charles Haley or Deion Sanders. When DeMarcus Lawrence is a fine player, but they need, like he said, they need somebody on defense that can be a star like they have on offense.
Right, and part of that you got to, if you're Jerry Jones, you got to look in the mirror. I mean, you are the general manager as well as the owner, and you haven't done a good enough job going out and getting those defensive type stars like that. The high draft picks haven't panned out like that. The Jalen Smith, the Leighton Vander Esch's. I mean, Randy Gregory. There's hope this year that he can meet that if he stays healthy and plays the whole season. He was a 2015 second round pick. Just those they've done an outstanding job. If you just judge the Cowboys drafting and adding personnel just on what they've done on offense, they'd be one of the best teams in the league. I mean, they've killed it over there. But on defense, I mean, it's probably as bad as any team in the league. They just, and then you go into this draft and you're thinking they're going to get one of these top corners, and they don't do that. So then you get Micah Parsons, who clearly wasn't their first choice. So, and then they get Calvin Joseph is the corner they add early, which they added in the second round. And you don't know that he's going to be the guy that steps in right away and makes an impact right off the bat. So you don't know if that's an instant impact, star on defense either, where this defense clearly needs that. So, yeah, he can say that, but he's also got to look at himself in the mirror and say, I haven't done a good enough job adding defensive players because they just haven't. It is. I mean, when you break down this roster, it's not even close to talent between their offense and defense.
John, I thought McCarthy's response to his initial reaction when the Hard Knock news broke was pretty funny. What did you make of that, and also just anything else that he had to say that's top of mind?
That's a good point because it's kind of ironic that he mentioned that answer when he was talking about Hard Knocks because we haven't got as much time behind the scenes with Mike McCarthy as we obviously did with Jason Garrett in previous years just because of, the pandemic and there's just limitations. And so you didn't get a lot of that walk-off type, where you get to really kind of get a sense for a person's, true personality. And I think that's a little bit of McCarthy you're going to see in Hard Knocks, depending on how much he's in it, is that he does have a really good sense of humor, that he's got kind of that a sarcasm like that. And for him to throw that in there, I could see some behind the scenes in meetings and stuff like that. I could see some people seeing a little bit more of that side of Mike McCarthy, because that certainly was one of the highlights in terms of some humor from the press conference, because no coach is going to sit there and raise their hand and say, excuse me, to the owner. Yeah, can we try and get Hard Knocks? I would just love for them to come out here for the next few weeks and just follow us around. That would be outstanding. Like, no coach is going to sign off for that. I mean, look at all the great coaches in the NFL. They would all dodge Hard Knocks. That's why you don't see most of them on Hard Knocks. It's usually the bad teams. And so, that definitely was a part that stood out to me. And then the other part would be just at the beginning. I mean, the first 10, 15 minutes were a lot of talk about, COVID and vaccinations. And it was kind of interesting that, Jerry said all but a handful of players. And he made it clear that a handful is 5 are going through the process right now of if they haven't gotten the first vaccine, in the process of getting it, or they have gotten the first vaccine and then they're in the process of getting the second. And so the 5 were kind of the way I took it is there's no chance these guys are doing it. They're just too against it, whatever. Obviously, if you only have 5, even if they make the 53, then you're still going to be over that 85, and then you're good to go. But Stephen Jones was adamant. He thinks that they'll easily be over 85% when the season starts, which if you get over 85%, that's the threshold for where things can kind of go back to what they were, go back to normal at least. But, we'll see, because they were one of the teams that they haven't crossed that threshold yet. And from what I had heard, it wasn't close to 85%. So the Cowboys are trying to say that it's much closer than what's being reported, and that by week 1, Stephen Jones said that he believes that they'll not only be at 85, but they'll be over 85.
John, I don't know how many of the players may have heard Michael Irvin's comments about the commitment to getting the vaccine. I'm not sure if you've had a chance, or even if you cared, about getting anybody's feedback. Any of the players pay attention to what he said?
I just don't. In today's day and age, I don't know how you don't see things like that if you're a player. Like, honestly, I would be impressed if a player hadn't seen that, because it's not only like Michael said it in one place. He has said it in multiple places, and with just guys being on social media all the time, I don't know how you wouldn't see something like that coming from not only one of the greatest Cowboys players of all time, but he's one of the most noted voices in football and the most outspoken voices in football that is just very, very well respected. And when he speaks, players, generally listen. And so whether they want to disagree with him or not, that's another topic. But I don't think there's any question that if not 90%, the majority of the team has heard about that. I mean, when Jerry was asked about it today, he didn't even hesitate. He knew exactly what was said. And he used his, he kind of danced around a little bit. He wasn't going to, totally take a shot at players and things like that, because he knows it's their own individual decision. But it is interesting that Michael would say that, just because it's tough to get everybody all on the same page nowadays. There's just so much information out there. There's so many people that are going to second guess, things just by whether you read something that you don't think that the vaccine is going to really help, or you think that it could bring, do something negative to you, so you don't want to get it. It's just going to be so hard to unite in an entire locker room. And so maybe if Michael Irvin was in the locker room, it would help. But hey, maybe a lot of guys, even if he was in the locker room, would be like, yeah, that's fine. We can get in a fist fight right now, but I'm not getting the vaccine because I don't want to get the vaccine for whatever reason it is. So it is interesting that he would say that, because I just think his voice carries a lot of weight, particularly with this organization.
I wonder if any of the players who have not gotten vaccinated are players that Cowboys particularly care about, someone good.
Yeah, I would say, it's interesting you bring that up, because it's when you say that, it makes you think, well, they got to trim this roster down. If you're on the bubble and you're one of those guys, is that part of the decision that makes them go in another direction? When they start cutting this roster, those last 10, maybe 15 cuts, those aren't easy at all. It's not like it just comes down to one or two tough decisions. There's a lot of tough decisions, and maybe that is something that if it is a guy that's on the bubble, that it makes the decision for them, is because they want to have as many guys vaccinated as possible. I don't know the exact names of those 5, and Jerry made it clear that they were not going to be releasing the names of those 5, but that is a good point that you bring up, because that could be a deciding factor when the roster gets trimmed.
Yeah, but what if it is? What if it's a couple of alphas?
Well, that's my kind of Michael Irvin's point, is you should care about being around your team and all that, and that's kind of the difference of, Yeah, it comes down to how people feel about it, and I wonder if a team. I can't imagine this would be true if a team would cut somebody because they didn't get the vaccine, but maybe that would they wouldn't say that, but perhaps.
Well, I'm putting it like this. the NFL, and I've just covered the NFL more than other sports, so I'm just going to speak on that compared to other ones, even though I totally think this flies with all professional sports. It's kind of like the player that might get involved in a lot of problems off the field, or might cause a lot of drama behind the scenes, and it's just like a lot of work, and it is just a lot of extra work goes into managing that player. Teams will go so far, franchises will go so far when that player is really good and contributing on Sundays. But as soon as their production starts dropping off, no one's dealing with that extra stuff anymore. And that's when you see guys, and all of a sudden they're like, hey, no, we appreciate everything you did. Thank you. No, thank you. Yeah. We're good here. We're good. We're ready to move on. So, but the other thing is, now that when you say it, I was also thinking this, that, you know, when Jerry says 5, it's probably 5 guys he thinks are going to be on the 53. Because if it was like, you know, 2 guys that he thinks will be on the 53, and then 3 guys that are just like these undrafted rookie free agents, like, hey, guys, if you don't want to play along, go. We'll find somebody else or whatever. I think it's 5 guys that matter. It's just my take and just me kind of, you know, reading between the lines.
If you don't mind, one question about that. I saw the way they had the press conference set up and the seating, and things have changed. And I know there's tiers of media allowed to be there early on, and at some point perhaps we'll be there in 2 or 3 weeks. Is it different, John, based on how that first day went?
I'll tell you what, the biggest difference is that they got us wearing those little like tracking things that like the players were wearing last year. So basically what it will read, like, you know, if there was an outbreak or whatever, they can plug those chips into a computer and it'll say like who was around who and how long they were around each other and things like that. And so they have media wearing that too. Now there are different tiers, and so I don't know if every single media member has it, but I know that, I mean, it's quite a few. I saw when they handed me mine, I mean, there was probably another, you know, 25, 30 of them out there. So, I mean, it's for most of the media that's going to be out here, just in case there is something like that. But, you know, for all the reporters that are out here, regardless of the tier, you know, like when I showed up, I had to show proof of vaccination, my vaccination card, and then I also had to show proof of a negative COVID test. That had to be taken within, I think it was the last week. I ended up getting mine like a few days ago, just to show that, you know, I tested negative. And then at some point, I think we'll get tested like once a week while we're out here, I believe is what it will be. And so that is certainly different. And then as you guys know, out on the tennis courts there, where they have the chair set up, generally they would just have rows and they would be all kind of together or whatever. Well, now they have them like kind of spaced apart, and everyone has like a name tag on theirs. And we were told today, like, don't be moving these chairs around like you guys have done in the past, because we have them spaced out because this is the way that they're supposed to be. And I think one of the other things that kind of goes into this is because, you know, the Cowboys playing in that Hall of Fame game, they're kind of the first team to start camp. And they're one of the few teams that are, you know, left their headquarters to have camp. And so I think they're pretty aware that the NFL is watching everything. So I think that they're going to be going out of their way to, you know, kind of, you know, cross every T and dot every I, just because they want to make sure that there's nothing over, you know, no issues, whatever, even though, like I said, everyone is vaccinated, but they're making sure that, you know, everyone gets, you know, it's as safe as possible. Yeah, there's definitely things that are going to be different about it. I can tell already.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. John Machota, theathletic.com, on Wednesdays with us at 5 o'clock. He's in Oxnard in California. Cowboys start their training camp there. All right, when we come back, more to